you build muscle, you burn fat, and when you recover, when you rest. So you're trying to do, Tabata hit workouts 5 days in a row or CrossFit 5 days in a row. It's not going to work so well. And I'll tell people, I want you to do less. I want you to eat more and just chill. And they're like looking at me like, you're crazy, because they want to lose weight. They're like, I'm getting bloated. The ladies are like, my belly's getting big. I'm tired. And then they come back like a week and a half later, like, oh my gosh, I'm down like 3 inches and 5 pounds and I feel better. I'm like, there you go. So sometimes it's that cortisol response, that stress response gets too amped up and you're not letting your body heal.
Hello and welcome back to the Vibrant Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emmie Brown, joined by my co-host, Melissa Gentile. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Eric Fete, who is founder of Prime X, a preventive health, age management, and peak performance company that provides nutrition products, educational materials, physician-grade supplements, hormone therapy, and personalized health plans for maximum health, vitality, performance, and wellness. Dr. Eric's motto is learning from the past, living for today, transforming the future. In this episode, we explore why muscle is far more than just a fitness goal. It's a key organ of longevity. Dr. Fete breaks down how to use bioidentical hormones, peptides, and lab data to recover harder, train smarter, and live longer. We'll also get to the critical role of sleep, stress, and rhythm in total body performance. Whether you're a practitioner or a wellness enthusiast, you'll leave this conversation ready to rethink the future of healthy aging. Dr. Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Dr. Eric, we're super excited for today's conversation just because I feel like muscle mass longevity is such a big topic. Just in our world right now, it's a big topic of conversation. So I want to start us off with, what is muscle medicine and what makes it different from traditional performance and wellness approaches?
Yeah, I'm glad you're excited about it. I am too. I've been talking about it for a while, and I kind of just came up with the phrase, and I kind of I'm trying to trademark it like muscle medicine, because I felt like nobody was really talking about it. I mean, for years, it's like, gosh, nobody's out there promoting it. So I was talking to, my team, and they're like, we need to talk about this more and just kind of niche it down a little bit, because there's not much. I think it's finally starting to get some steam. People are starting to recognize it. So just one of those forgotten things, I think, that people just kind of forget about it. And I guess I come from nutrition, more like a fitness background. I've always been, an athlete, been involved in nutrition my whole life. Learned, my parents were teachers. I learned about science from my father, who's he taught physiology and biology, and had some cholesterol issues his whole life. So I learned about that, and I wrestled and did martial arts. So I learned how to kind of manipulate my body composition through the years. So I've always had an interest in it. And obviously I went to med school and did all that stuff, but it's always been interesting how complex the human body is. And I think most people just kind of think of muscle as, well, it's just for looks, or, flex poses in the mirror or selfies and stuff. And I'm like, well, it's really a lot more than that, right? It's metabolically active, and it's actually an endocrine organ. It's probably one of the largest endocrine organs in the body. So when I learned about hormones and peptides, it's kind of like, well, it's actually has endocrine functions and secretes these little cytokines called myokines, which have a lot of beneficial effects on the body. So anyway, so that's kind of my premise, is like really about building the body up, building up the metabolism. So, our health and our longevity shouldn't be about like scrimping and saving. It's like, if you want to get healthy and lose weight, you shouldn't have to like starve yourself and fast for, days and days and just give up all these foods. You should be able to do what you want, do what you want, but make yourself healthy, make yourself strong and vibrant. And you could do the things you want, eat the things you want, and still have the body you want. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So that was kind of my approach to it, rather than taking the less is more. Let's just make things better. So anyway, so that was kind of my focus. Like I said, I didn't hear a lot of people talking about muscle. So it just, kind of, it gelled with me, just because as a fitness enthusiast, it was a good blend of science, medicine, and fitness. So I was like, to me, it was a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like this has been a lifelong practice for you, Dr. Eric. And so I'm wondering, when you were in the ER, and I know you didn't have much time to counsel patients, I'm sure, but did you find yourself trying to do a little bit of lifestyle counseling, because you're coming from this background where your whole life you really prioritized exercise, I'm sure diet also. So I'm curious what that experience was like, trying to counsel people maybe after seeing them in the ER.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that. And that's kind of part of my secret origin story, right? It's like I was an ER doc, and I think that's what kind of got me into this space, because, very fast paced. You see a lot of acuity, a lot of sick people, and I learned how to deal with pretty much anything that came through the door, and think on my feet. But I started seeing, very unhealthy people at a younger and younger age, and so I started seeing people in their 20s and 30s and 40s with they're disabled, they're on like 20 medications, they're overweight, and they're all these health issues. I'm thinking you should be in the prime of your life. And like, oh my gosh, you could have prevented this if you just would have done some healthy things with your lifestyle. And so, yeah, I would start talking to people about exercise or eating right or not smoking or just, simple stuff, the limited time that I had. And, even when I was transitioning out of ER, I did some addiction medicine too, same thing. And I try to talk to people about that, about things they could do to kind of curb their addictions and get healthier, right? Rather than sitting around and thinking about, getting high or smoking. It's like you could go out in the sun, get some sun on your skin, get some exercise, and you can make yourself feel good without taking these drugs, right? So I always try to like sprinkle it in a little bit and just kind of give some little pointers, little tips here and there. But then now in my preventive medicine practice, obviously I can spend a lot more time with it, right? I can delve deep. So, but yeah, everybody I talk to, I'm always trying to throw some things out there. People, just friends and family, just like, hey, what about this? Or how about this? And heard about that. So I was just trying to sprinkle some little pearls of wisdom where I can.
Yes. And I'm sure that was refreshing for, some of those patients who were listening. So, yeah, I'm curious, Dr. Eric, what do you think is the most overlooked factor in preserving muscle and metabolic health as we age at this point? Because we're talking about protein all the time. So is there an overlooked factor? Because right now, it's interesting kind of the debate as far as how much protein we should be getting in. But is there another overlooked factor that maybe isn't talked about enough?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, right? I mean, yeah, number one, to your point, right? Protein, right? And I think a lot of that always comes up. And so especially with my female clients, I feel like there's still that stigma to that myth about building muscle. Like, I don't want to get big and I need to eat more protein. They're afraid, right? And it's like, no, you could eat as much. You're not going to get huge. It's just, there's just no way, without, anabolics and things like that. So it's like overcoming that myth of you can eat more protein, you can lift heavy weights, you can lift some heavy crap, right? And look good and feel good. So overcoming that myth, I think, is the biggest. I think it's finally starting to catch on, but I think the other part of it is, your hormonal health and your cellular health. So I do a lot of like what I call cellular medicine. Like, it's really getting down to the cell level, like getting the cell to work. And that comes down to just eating healthier and like taking care of the mitochondria. I think there's a big focus on gut health and mitochondria health. And sometimes it's like, people are doing all the right things, but there's something missing. And that might be because of their mitochondrial health, their cellular health is bad, meaning inside the cells are like, think of them like little cars, right? There's little factories and they have to make energy, right? But they're outside the cells, there's the cell membrane. If it's not working properly, then the nutrients aren't getting in or the toxins aren't getting out. And that could be from a multitude of factors. But as you ladies both know, we live in a very unhealthy, toxic world, right? We're surrounded by Wi-Fi and like plastics and crap on our food and nutrient depleted soil and glyphosate and all this kind of stuff. And it makes it very difficult. So sometimes we have to get the cells healthy by getting all that stuff out. And as like we've talked about, I think probably on consults with Vibrant, like gut health and toxin removal and things of this nature. So I think sometimes that gets forgotten about, just getting back to the basics of getting the cell healthy by restoring like circadian rhythms, restoring those cells by removing toxins and taking care of the gut. But a lot of it, some people come from a very healthy place. So it just comes down to the basics, right? Eating real food, organic food, eating enough protein, lifting heavy things, and moving, constant movement. So those are kind of the big ones, but there's more to it. But those are kind of the big ones I'm always harping on quite a bit.
Just out of curiosity, and we didn't plan on going this direction, but I just have to squeeze this question in before we move on. You mentioned a little bit about toxins. And if you have a client or patient that comes in and you can just really tell that they have a high toxic burden, are you taking them through a bit more of a catabolic cleansing type of protocol or putting them in that state? Or are you like working on their body composition and detoxing like at the same time? Or do you have to kind of phase these things out?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So yes, sometimes both, right? So I fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess I haven't had too many people with, I've had some people with some toxic issues, where there was like mold exposure or environmental like fumes. I had one particular patient who was in an environment they used a lot of chemical cleaners, and it just really hit her hard, and it made her feel terrible, and she had to get out of that environment. So sometimes I'll try to do both, right? I'll try to reduce the inflammation on their body and try to kind of detox their body a little bit too. So I use a lot of peptides and obviously hormone therapy. But sometimes some people come to me and they're already on doing treatments and it's not working, but it's because, again, the cell's not working. We got to get those toxins out. We got to stabilize the cell. So that's where we get into things like plasmalogens, and phospholipids and the, fatty acids to get the cell membrane solid and stable, the mitochondrial peptides to get the mitochondria working and to stabilize them a little bit, and then kind of purging the system things like infrared sauna and detoxification, and whether it's really hardcore stuff like charcoals and zeolites or something else. Or I see a lot of infections, or I have a number of patients who have had like vaccine injuries or long haul COVID. So it's a question of like treating that, right? And killing the bad bugs, healing the gut, and kind of purging that system. So sometimes, most of the time, I'm doing multiple things at once, but occasionally, usually my first step is like reduce the inflammation, heal the body first. Because a lot of people are like, I want to lose weight, of course, and like, well, they're inflamed, their gut's a mess, they've got these infections. And I always tell them, I said, we have to do it in phase. We have to get rid of the inflammation first and quiet that down. Otherwise, the other stuff's just never going to happen. So usually that's focus number one: inflammation, purging the system, and then we'll kind of focus on body composition and building the body back up.
I like that perspective. And you mentioned a little bit about hormones. We can't really talk about body composition without talking about hormones first. So what's the key difference between like a normal hormone level and a truly optimal hormone level? Because we all know some of the reference ranges on conventional labs are not always ideal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that comes up all the time. And I still see that every day, and especially on like when I'm reading like social media or posts, and people are like, to this day, it's one of my pet peeves and one of the myths out there, right? Where, well, I went and saw so-and-so and I'm normal, right? Well, I'm like, well, normal is not optimal. And that's different for everybody. Everybody's unique and everybody's different. That's kind of what I try to do, is create a customized plan for that person. There is no one diet, one hormone plan, one peptide plan for everyone. Everybody is different doses, different routes of administration, different protocols, different timing of everything. And that's where the individuality comes into play. So, but in general, I like to keep things super simple. So I always tell people, like, think of like school. You can pass a class as an A student, B student, all the way down. You could be a D- and still pass the class. I'm like, well, I don't want you to be a D student. I want you to be an A student. So it's kind of like, if your hormone level is, say, let's use testosterone as an example. It goes from, whatever, 300 to 1,000. You could be 302 and be normal. I don't know anybody that feels good at 302, but they're going to feel a hell of a lot better at 900. So, or wherever, at least the upper end. So that's how I explain it to people. Like, I want you to be optimal. And some people feel optimal here. Other people need to be way up here to feel optimal, but huge difference. Yeah, normal. And the other issue is, like, kind of going back to that cell, is like, it could be normal in the blood, but it doesn't mean it's getting into the cells, whatever that is, whether it's a peptide, a vitamin, a hormone. If it's not getting into the tissue, it's not doing its job. And I see that a lot with, for example, thyroid patients. People may have normal thyroid hormones because it's normal in the bloodstream, but they're not converting it from an active, like, for example, a T4 into a T3, or the T3 is not getting into the cell. It has to go through membrane receptors. It has to activate into the genes, has to do all these things, and they may not be doing that. And there's no way to test for that other than looking at their symptoms and some of the other downstream chemicals, lab work, metabolites, and things like that. And it's usually from toxins or micronutrient deficiencies or stressors on their body or something else going on. So even though they're normal, yeah, but it doesn't mean it's working inside the cell. And that's the whole different flip on paradigm that nobody understands. And it's like, if you've got all the symptoms, I'm going to treat you because I don't care what the blood work shows. You've got it. So, and that's a nuance, and a lot that gets missed all the time.
This is a good segue to speak about HRT and bioidentical HRT, particularly, Dr. Eric. I'm curious, how do you approach HRT with longevity in mind? Because there might be, as you said, there's artistry to consider, in addition to, of course, the standard guidelines. And I have a question about that later as far as when to start HRT. But are you starting this maybe in with longevity in mind for folks who maybe don't typically qualify for HRT?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I think kind of the classical, starting periods, et cetera, there is some flexibility there, right? And I definitely is one of the key players for longevity, because, the most of the studies and the clinical scenarios clearly show that, if you optimize your hormones, quite frankly, you're going to live longer. You're going to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by up to 30 to 40%, reduce your risk of osteoporosis, of cancers, by double digit percentages. So you can't, address longevity without dealing with your hormones. It's just an absolute, you just have to do it. But I'm seeing, people at a younger and younger age having these issues. And again, it kind of goes back to that, toxic world we live in, where I'm seeing, people with low hormones or suboptimal hormonal function, in their 30s and 20s and 40s. And whereas, maybe 10, 15 years ago, is like, wouldn't see it until people were in their 60s or 70s. Now it's moving it back, and which is kind of frightening. So I do address it at an earlier age. And then to your question about, timing. Yeah. I mean, like with women is a great example. The classic menopausal diagnosis is not made until, you haven't had a menstrual cycle for 12 months and your labs show XYZ. Well, some women are kind of catching this and they're like, well, I want to kind of catch it before I get there. Right. So
Right.
people are asking me. So I think there is some nuance there. So there are a number of patients, I will start it a little bit early before they get to that classic definition, but you have to be very careful because some women are, when they're getting through perimenopause, they're still making some estrogen. Every now and then they get that it's almost like a little lava spew, right? Every now and then they get that little burst. So if you put them on too big a dose too early, and now all of a sudden they spit out some estradiol or estrogen for a period of time, they could be pretty miserable. So you definitely want to wait till they're kind of over that hump. So if you start too early, you could get into trouble. So, but if you're flexing it a little bit, a few months, or based on their symptoms and their lab work, there's definitely some leeway to start a little bit earlier than what we used to. So again, that's the art. So.
Mm-hmm. And what about, is it ever too late? Because I know there's been some debate about this. There was a January 2025 Lancet article questioning maybe we don't need to stick with the rigid 10 years within after menopause or before age 60. So how do you approach that?
I agree. I think there's always benefit for sure. Now after 10 years or 60s, whatever that arbitrary number that like you said, that's been looked at in multiple studies. Now there may not be as much benefit specifically for say cardiovascular health or dyslipidemias, cholesterol issues, things like that. Because at that point, a lot of times if someone has plaque in their arteries or some heart disease, it's there. And you may stabilize it, you may make it better. You're still going to reduce the risk of a MACE or a major adverse cardiovascular event or death. But if you started earlier, you can actually reverse some of that plaque with estradiol, et cetera. Whereas later, you may not be able to reverse, but you can stabilize, you can make it better, and you can slow down the progression. So there's still benefit, but you're also still going to get benefit on bone formation, reducing inflammation, reducing visceral fat. So you're still going to get a lot of benefits. It may not be as much as if you had started, right out of the gate within the first, 5-10 years of menopause, but you're still going to get some benefit.
Yeah, super helpful. I'm glad that we're talking about that because I think that's a point we need to clarify for folks.
For sure.
Okay, well, we've got so much to unpack with you, Dr. Eric. So I'm going to move on to peptides because I think this is a really hot topic right now.
It is.
And so you're a big advocate for peptide therapy. So I want to know, how do you choose the right peptides to support muscle growth and recovery? And I'm wondering if and how GLP-1s fit into this puzzle.
Yeah, that's a great question too. Lots to unpack there. So it all comes down as just like with hormones and supplements and diet, comes down to that N of one, what's unique for that person and that their specific situation. Because everybody's gonna be a little bit different. Again, is there inflammation? Is there some autoimmune issue to work on? Is there some gut issues? Where are they? And then I always start with everybody, no matter what. I always start with the free stuff first. I always start with lifestyle because
the free stuff, I like that.
Yeah. It's overlooked.
Because if people are like, well, I just want to sit on the couch and, eat Cheetos and get jacked. I'm like, I'm not your guy. I'm not going to help you. I can't help you. You can't. Sorry. Or if they're not willing to do the work, if they're not going to exercise and move and eat, try to at least make a best effort to eat clean and so on and so forth. It's I'm willing to help them, but it's not going to be the same. You have to put in the work. You got to take the lifestyle changes because lifestyle is 90% of the battle, unfortunately, no matter what. Sleep, stress, diet, movement. I mean, those are just foundational. You just can't, there's no magic pill, there's no magic peptide or hormone that's going to make you, uber healthy and superwoman or supergirl without doing that. And I try to break that. I think most people get that. I think there's obviously a lot of people that just want the easy button, but it just doesn't exist. Right. So I always start that. And I always like to, again, I try to be cognizant of people's time and their pocketbook. Cause it's like, I don't want you spending all this money on peptides if you haven't done all this basic stuff first. So let's start there. Let's get you healthy. Let's start with the free stuff, getting outside. I'm big on like circadian rhythms, like getting outside, looking at the sun, touching the grass, getting outside and moving throughout the day as much as you can. Eating real food. You don't have to, spend thousands of dollars at a big gym. You can work out at home or just get outside and walk every day. You can eat real food. Getting your sleep in, going to bed at the same time. The basic stuff we can get into later if you wish to, but I always start with the foundational stuff: lifestyle, eating, exercise, circadian rhythms. Then we'll start talking about other stuff. We'll talk about hormone therapy because that's foundation. We may talk about some nutraceuticals. If they've got some major deficiencies, we need to correct that. And that could be pretty inexpensive. Then the peptides are kind of like the icing on the cake, right? That's kind of like, okay, now we're going to take you to the next level and do that. So, and there's a lot we can do there with body composition, with muscle. The peptides aren't, none of them are going to be like, wow, I'm going to go from like skinny to like major muscular. They just don't do that, but they are very anti-catabolic. They can slow down the breakdown of muscle tissue and promote muscle preservation and kind of kind of stimulate those anabolic pathways somewhat. There's nothing to be like anabolic steroids or testosterone per se, but combined with them, they're going to be very synergistic. But again, they can help maintain the health of the muscle tissue and promote growing in that way and promote better functional capacity. And they can also promote some fat burning, some overall body composition, and like we were talking about earlier, like reducing inflammation, promoting deep sleep, and things like this. So I use a lot of the growth hormone peptides, for example, the CJC, ipamorelin, tesamorelin, strimorelin. They're all very good for those things in terms of promoting healing, tissue recovery, those cellular function I was talking about earlier, and promoting deep sleep. And they can help with some body composition in terms of promoting fat burning and maintenance some healthy muscle tissue. But there's other things that are synergistic too, like the healing peptides. We could talk about like BPC or the thymosins. And I'm big on mitochondrial peptides are big too, right? They, like I said, if the cell's not healthy, the mitochondria are not healthy. We need to build that up first. That's why I'm going to focus on like the small molecules, the different fatty acid esters, like the benzodecanoic acids, the fat, omega-3s, the plasmalogens to get the cell healthy. And then the mitochondrial peptides can help with mitochondrial function in terms of getting the cell to work, providing you more energy, being able to fuel your body and making you more insulin sensitive. And there's some newer ones out there now, which can actually almost like exercise mimetics, which can actually help you basically have the same benefits of exercise without exercise, like improving mitochondrial function, burning fat more efficiently while at rest, improving energy output. So there's some cool ones out there that can help with that too. So there's a whole bunch of little ones we could put together. So that's a start. We can dig in anything else you want. I mean, we can go down any road you want to go to.
I was going to say, I kind of want to touch on just like body composition in general. And when you're putting like protocols together for patients, obviously you mentioned that you're using sometimes some peptides as long as they have the foundations kind of in place. But when it comes to training and recovery, you have this kind of phrase here, recover harder to train smarter. What does that look like in action?
Yeah. So, most people kind of know this, but sometimes they forget about it. Like you build muscle, you burn fat, and when you recover, when you rest. So a lot of people like to work out 7 days a week or whatever. It's like, well, you can't, and you can't overtrain. You can do too much. So, if you get that training stimulus, whatever the workout that is, you need to recover. You got to let your body heal. You're breaking down that tissue, but it needs to rebuild. So if you're just breaking it down pretty hard, if you're trying to do Tabata hit workouts 5 days in a row or CrossFit 5 days in a row, it's not going to work so well. You might be able to do it for a while, but you're going to be pretty sore and you're going to probably get worse. So, and I see this a lot with your average person. I've even worked with some pretty well-known personal, trainers who got a pretty big presence. And I used to talk to them and coach with them, and they overtrain. And it's like, and they know, of all people, they know, but sometimes you get caught in that trap. And like, as soon as I back them down, and I'll tell people, say, I want you to do less. I want you to eat more and just chill. And they're like looking at me like, you're crazy, because they want to lose weight. They're like, I'm getting bloated. The ladies are like, my belly's getting big. I'm tired. You want me to eat more and not work out? Yes. Then they come back like a week and a half later, like, oh my gosh, I'm down like 3 inches and 5 pounds and I feel better. I'm like, there you go. So sometimes it's that cortisol response, that stress response gets too amped up and you're not letting your body heal. So like I said, just have to, and that's part of the whole structuring your fitness routine. It's like really making sure that you're hitting it hard, but recover twice as hard, especially as we get older. Once we get in our 40s and 50s, it's like you really got to spend more time recovering. And you may need it more than when we were 18. Maybe at 18, you could work out hard 5 days in a row, but as you get older, you can't do that. So anyways, that's why I say train hard, recover harder, because you'll reap the benefits that way. So it all comes down to just kind of structuring and program what works for them and finding a timing aspect.
Do you have like an ideal structure or kind of split between things? Like, do you have like maybe even like a 5 day or 6 day of like a couple days of weights, a couple days of some like cardio, because we want to kind of switch it up on some different modalities here to make sure we're not neglecting flexibility and other things like that. So is there a kind of an ideal, I guess, protocol that you get?
Yeah, so it depends on the person, where they are, and what they like to do, what they don't like to do. But in general, when you're focusing on like your mitochondrial health and longevity and all these different pathways, there's like, for example, and they can both help the mitochondria and help those longevity pathways, but they do it in different ways. Different types of cardio do different things. So you'll hear different routines, right? So, whether it's like a high intensity, there's different types of high intensity. And then that can work the mitochondria in different fashion to grow your mitochondria. And there's other ones that make them more efficient. So I like to sprinkle them all in a little bit. But if I have someone who's confused, or they just don't know where to start, my basic protocol is like, I want you to lift some weights, do some type of strength training at least 3 days a week, say minimum 2, but 3 to 4 days a week. And then just walk every day. People hear about the 7,000, 10,000 steps, whatever. There's something to that, right? Just walking every day. And if you just do that, I think that's a great place to start for most people. It's super simple. Anybody can do it. And I tell people, look, you don't have to like be in the gym for an hour, hour and a half. You could get a killer workout in 20, 30 minutes. I mean, if you don't believe me, I've got a few that I can say. I always tell them, I'll send you a workout. You do this for 20 minutes straight. You're going to be tired. You're not going to want to go anymore. So it can be very time efficient. And then I say the next step up after that is to sprinkle in some more different types of cardiovascular activity to stimulate that mitochondria. So that's what we'll add in some high intensity interval training. And it could be your classic Tabata protocol, or even better, something like, an interval training where you go hard for 30 seconds, then you go easy for like a minute, minute and a half, and repeat, for like 10 to 15 minutes or something simple like that. And you don't have to do a lot of that. You can do too much of that. But if you do like twice a week, super easy. So that's usually where I start with most people. And then from there, it just kind of depends on the person, right? Some people absolutely hate, doing machines or whatever, and they love to hike. Okay, great. I want you to hike twice a week, on top of walking every day. So it kind of, that's where I get into like, what do you like to do? What do you hate to do? That kind of thing, and try to figure out what works for them. So, but that's kind of my basic template. I like to rotate strategies too. So I may have them be doing some like interval training, like I told you, for a few weeks. And then maybe the next 2 weeks, I might have them do like alactate training. So something like where they're doing like every minute on the minute. So like 10 kettlebell swings, and then you rest until the next minute, and then you do it again. So you give your body, so you're never really getting that lactate threshold. You're just kind of getting to the close, and then you're letting your ATP recover. And it's a good way to really build your cardiovascular endurance without overburdening yourself with too much lactic acid. A lot of people like go balls to the wall with like the lactic acid or the HIIT training, and they do too much. And then if you have too much lactic acid in their tissue, they're actually going to cause some metabolism, cause burning down that muscle. So you don't want that. So every now and then is okay, but I like the alactate training or the more spread out interval training, because that gives you more of that cardiovascular adaptation. The other thing, I like to flip the switch. Sometimes I'll have them do a little bit of interval training before their strength training workout, because that actually primes the stem cells to get into build mode. It kind of primes them and gets a growth factors in place that can actually stimulate anabolism. So when you do your strength training workout, now your stem cells are in your muscles are primed, your hormones are primed to build muscle. So it kind of flips the script. I like to do things a little differently. Most people think of like, well, don't do your hits after your workout, or don't do them together. And I don't think you should do it all the time, but every now and then, if you could do like a short 3 to 4 minute interval training before your strength training workout, you could really stimulate anabolism that way. But in general, try to split them up. But that's kind of my general template, and then we kind of can tweak and modify from there.
Ooh, I like this, because I'm always thinking, what's my structure for my exercise routine? What's going to be most optimal? So I'm glad you mentioned also doing cardio before strength. That is, just like you said, flipping the script on what we generally hear. We generally hear you don't want to burn out on cardio, and then you can't lift as heavy for weight training. But you're saying just like a little burst. I like that. Yeah,
like a little, like your classic Tabata, maybe not that crazy. I think another thing that works for a lot of people, what I do myself, is a lot of times like in the your morning, people talk about morning routines. I think in the morning, get up and do your thing and like do some meditation, some prayer, some read the Bible, do whatever, but then just do some gentle movement. It could be a simple walk, or it could be an easy bike, something just to get some easy cardio and nothing crazy. And then later in the day, do your strength training, your intervals. If you look at like, the chronobiology, it's like we are primed to have best results and recover and best response to strength training in the afternoon, right? 3 to 5 or so. But not everybody can do that because of work or whatever, which I get. I mean, for a while there when I was commuting, I had to train in the morning. So that was the only time I could do it. I think it's best to do it in the afternoon. But again, if you can't, then do it in the morning. Whatever works for you, do it. But I think that split works out for a lot of people pretty well. Just do some easy cardio in the morning. I've got like a little fat protocol, right? Like if you get up, maybe drink some coffee, do some cardio, and then do a cold plunge afterwards. You can really start that fat burning process, and then get on with your day. And then later you do the heavy training, and you kind of get a double burn that way. But again, if you're just too busy, then just do one thing. If some people are like, I'm just too busy, I got too much, fine. Lift the weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, do your cardio, and then just walk every day. Walk in the morning, walk in the afternoon, take a walk after every meal, which helps improve insulin sensitivity, helps you digestion, etc. Everybody can get 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. It's pretty easy to just, you know what I mean? So that's kind of my basic template. But I've got, like I said, I've got different protocols, different interval tactics to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, to stimulate your recovery, your overall condition. There's different things I like to like mix up and mix and match here and there. So
that's fantastic. I think that structured answer is just what we were looking for, and our listeners will appreciate that, Dr. Eric. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the cognitive benefit of exercise for this conversation. So I'm curious, Are you looking at any research? Some comes to mind. Dr. Stacey Sims, exercise physiologist, is speaking to cognitive benefit, particularly for women and high intensity exercise. So any thoughts there?
Absolutely. So building muscle has a lot of cognitive benefits in general. Like it's the biggest thing that gets forgotten about is your mitochondrial health, which we were talking about earlier, like building my healthy mitochondria, functional mitochondria, and you improve what's called what they call there's fission and fusion of the mitochondria. They split apart, they come together, and you're improving that. And so you can also improve your insulin sensitivity, your metabolic capacity, meaning like I was saying at the very beginning, you can actually eat more now because if it's the right food, because you're able to, you're more insulin sensitive and you're going to do some nutrient partitioning. So by being active throughout the day, lifting the weights, doing the cardio, you're going to be more metabolically active. You're going to burn through more fuel while at rest. Your metabolism is going to go up, and then you're going to partition your nutrients. So when you do eat, you can partition those nutrients into your muscle instead of your fat if you time it right. So that's going to improve that. And then and like I said earlier, to your point, it can definitely improve neurologic health because of the myokines you're secreting when you exercise. These little cytokines, these little enzymes are secreted by your muscle. Things like irisin, IL-6, decorin, BDNF, which are a brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which affects the brain directly. So by exercising, you're improving your BDNF, which is improving your neurologic function, improving those connections with your neurons, improving what we call neuroplasticity, your functional capacity of your brain to think better, to make more connections, make neural connections, and to heal and to reduce neuroinflammation. So you're improving other as those myokines improve your bones. So you can make your bones stronger, your brain work better, and your gut work better with that digesting and weight loss. And you improve your metabolism all just with exercise. So it's like a magic in a pill. So it does all these things, which is
fantastic. The no-brainer.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Like, you sure you don't want to work out? It's like, what?
It's wild. Sometimes I think about, there's so many people who work in an office and they wake up, they get out of bed, they walk to their car, then they walk to their seat at their desk, and then they're back in the car and back on the couch and then in bed. And it's just on repeat.
Whoa. Mm-hmm. Everybody say, NEAT, that non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is the biggest mover in terms of calories. So I always tell everybody, even if you're really tight on time, just even if you had an office job, every 30 to 60 minutes, just get up and move around for like 5 minutes.
Yes, exercise snacks. That's a term I recently learned about.
Yes, exercise with snacks. So, if you're squatting up and down, jumping down, walking around, go up and down the stairs, just gentle movement throughout the day, that all adds up over time, and that does wonders for you. So even if you just do that, that's something.
Yeah. Any tips on walking pads, or I know there's some walking pads that are being advertised now for standing desks, and that could be helpful. I don't know if I want to get one for myself, but I'm wondering, like, how fast do they go? Because I imagine that I want to pick it up a bit.
I think something that's helpful. I'm sitting at a standing desk right now. Like, if I wasn't talking with you ladies, I'd probably be standing up right now. Like, I'm always up, down, up, down, and like pacing back and forth and moving around and stuff. But I think there's, can you move your feet and do all that stuff while you're sitting? Yeah, it's better than nothing. I don't know in terms of how many calories they burn, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't think there's any harm with it.
Yeah, I could talk about exercise all day. Okay, but we should move on to labs. I'm curious, how do you approach labs in your practice? What functional medicine labs are you using? And really just kind of what's your baseline laboratory panel for patients who maybe they feel good, they want to feel better, they want to optimize?
Yeah, so I kind of use a laboratory called Access Medical, and I custom made my own lab panels. I have like a very basic and a very comprehensive one. And I can add to it if I need to. But I look at all the labs, but I do kind of a deep dive on a few things that I see a lot of patients that they don't have. I check your blood counts, your basic chemistry. But in terms of people, especially if they're older, I always look at their lipids, their cholesterol. But I do more of a deep dive on that. I do what's called an NMR profile. So I look at your ApoA, your ApoB, the size of your particles, your LDL particle number, Lp(a), which sometimes gets forgotten about. I'll check at that. And then I look at all the hormones, and sometimes people come in, like, if they go to their typical doctor, they'll just get like a TSH. Well, I always get the free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and the TSH, and the thyroid antibodies. Look at your vitamin D, your insulin, your cortisol. And I look at all the inflammatory markers, because those are huge. Those are massively important, because that you might pick up some inflammation that might be a clue, and that might be why they're not sleeping or they're not losing weight, and they have some inflammatory markers, or leptin resistance. Everybody hears about insulin resistance, but leptin resistance gets forgotten about sometimes, and that's a big one. And I can pick that up sometimes looking at their inflammatory markers, looking at their circadian rhythms. And if their leptin's out of whack, we got to fix that.
How do you address that? Sorry, I had to squeeze that in there because we don't talk about that much, just like you said.
Or what about low leptin? Do you see both sides of it, or
both sides of what? I'm sorry.
Like on the flip side of leptin resistance, but do you see low levels as well?
Every now and then, yeah, I do. If someone's really sensitive, or maybe they're underweight, I'll see normal. Or if they're just metabolically normal, we'll see a normal to low leptin, which is fine, as long as they're asymptomatic. But usually, unfortunately, nowadays, most people, we're a lot of, insulin resistance is big. A lot of people are overweight, so I tend to see a lot of high leptins. I don't check leptin all the time, but if someone's struggling or having issues, I'll check it. And what I see, the other aspect of that is really fixing. It all comes down to fixing their insulin resistance, but also fixing their circadian rhythm. I like to blend the old and the new. So I very much on all the new cutting edge, the new peptides, new small molecules, nutraceuticals, hormones. But I like the old stuff too, because it's classic, things like grounding, getting outside, circadian rhythms. I'm big on that. And sometimes that's the missing piece, right? Getting, when you go outside and look at the sun every morning, it's not just, oh, there's the sun, it's pretty. It's actually going into your eyeballs to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain and optimizing your hormone, getting your cortisol set, priming your melatonin to secrete later in the evening so you can actually sleep. You're stimulating melanin production, which turns on MSH and these other neurochemical pathways, which can improve leptin and leptin signaling, which is going to improve your body composition, your appetite, and your weight. And then sometimes it's also about, timing. We're meant to get up and look at the sun. We're meant to typically move and eat more in the morning. So a lot of these people that are fasting, skipping breakfast, sometimes leptin's out of whack. We're almost more primed genetically and circadian rhythm perspective to have a bigger meal in the breakfast and a bigger lunch, and then eat less at dinner, and then turn that off. And then in the evening, turn off the screens, turn off the blue light, all that stuff, which is stimulating and preventing melanin and melatonin production. That's screwing it all up. So sometimes it's fixing the light, fixing the water, and fixing your circadian pathways, and then eating at the right times and eating the right foods at the right times. And that alone can sometimes turn off that leptin and optimize your leptin, which is going to help you fix your insulin. And then you're going to start losing weight and reducing inflammation. So it's a combination of those things. And then if we have to, we can throw in some nutraceuticals, hormones, peptides to kind of speed that up. But usually starts with that. And that gets missed a lot.
So kind of pulling on that thread, you're known for your circadian agenda. What does that look like, and why does it matter so much?
Yeah, big time. So kind of what I was just talking about really is just really about priming your pathways. I think big thing is for me is like I said, getting outside in the morning when the sun comes up. We're kind of meant to get out and look at the sun, to get your feet in the grass and ground. There's actually now we're starting to see more science about that, about reducing inflammation, making your blood a little less viscous, and improving, that energy flow through your body. But that neurologic pathway in your brain, like I said, your leptin signaling, your cortisol signaling, your melanin signaling, that's going to prime you for optimal pathways throughout the day and get your hormone pathways going. And then throughout the day, you're doing your thing. And then at night, kind of the opposite, dark, cool, less blue light. I mean, everybody's on the screens and watching TV all hours, and that's screwing us up. Around this EMF all day. We're inside. We're meant to be outside, amongst the trees and the grass. And, it sounds woo-woo, but there's more and more science backing this up nowadays. So it's just really about getting those, we're electric beings. We're like energetic beings. That's what our mitochondria thrive on. Melatonin's a great example. Most people think of melatonin as being made in our brain, which it is, but actually most of it is made in our mitochondria. So if you're drinking and you're staying hydrated throughout the day, you're getting your sun, you're getting infrared light, red light, which you get from the sun, or you can get in the sauna or infrared light, you're producing that, what they call that structured water in your mitochondria. You're making melatonin in your mitochondria. And now your cells, everything I was talking about, they all start to work together. And now you're making energy. You're not getting that afternoon crash. You're starting to lose weight. And then you're going to sleep at the right time, flipping the script, getting off the lights and making it dim and cool. And now you can prime your body for sleep. So by getting the circadians and pathways, it's not just about the light and the dark, which it is, but it's also helping your internal cellular environment, your mitochondria, all your hormonal environment function properly too. Now you can see all the pieces are starting to kind of come together. It's and it doesn't have to be hard, so for me, it's as simple. And I give people like a little sheet, like a one pager, kind of summing all this up, get up in the morning with the sun, take exercise snacks, outside snacks, get outside every chance you get the sun on your skin, those UVA, UVB rays, don't be afraid of them, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're going to make vitamin D, you're going to turn on your hormone production, you're going to get your leptin optimized. And then at night, it's kind of the opposite. Watch the sun go down, get inside, get it dark, turn off the blue screens, and then start your wind down routine so you can actually get into deep sleep where you're going to recover, you're going to boost growth hormone, you're going to burn fat, and you're going to get in that deep restorative sleep so you could recover. So they all, the PCO, they all kind of line up, right? So it's about building and recovering. And so those cellular pathways are all lined up and at the right time. So right now people are doing the opposite, right? We're getting up. First thing we do is, we look at that phone, right? We get that blue light. We're not going outside. And then at night, we're lighting our eyes. We're watching Netflix all night. And then we're staying up and eating snacks all night. And then we're wondering why we're not tired, why we're waking up tired, why we're snoring, why we're gaining weight, right? So, yeah. And that's all free, right? That's easy.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'd love to know, Dr. Eric, what do you do? What are your daily rituals, environmental tweaks? What does it look like for you to get up and go? What are you doing in the morning? Are you walking? What does it look like? Can you paint the picture for us? And I want to go all the way through the day. Are you using blue light blockers at nighttime? Are you really just shutting everything down? I'd love to know kind of what it looks like for you.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to hear your routine and Melissa's.
Okay.
So
Some fun.
it varies a little bit, but usually I'm up pretty early. I'm usually up at 5 or 6, depending most days, and usually depending if I'm up with the sun or not, kind of thing. I'll usually try to go outside, try to get outside. I'll literally go out, and so usually my dog needs out anyway, so I'll go out in my bare feet. I'll stand in the grass.
They're the best for that. They get you out there.
They are
the dogs.
Yeah, she's like, let's go.
Yep.
So go outside and I put my feet in the grass and I look at the sun. And then sometimes if she's kind of screwing around, sometimes I'll actually do some meditation out there while I'm out there. I like the standing meditation like Qigong or Qigong, like the Chinese style where it's a standing meditation and you do movements where you just stand in a certain position. And I'll try to, I like to be efficient. I like to try to kill 3 birds with one stone. So I'll meditate. I'll do some affirmations, do some gratitude practice every day. Vitamin G. I heard somebody talk about that on podcast. Vitamin G. Gratitude. What are you grateful for?
I like that.
I'm big on mindset. I think like Tony Robbins talks about this. I think you can change how you feel just by the words you say. The words are very powerful. The thoughts you put in your head and your movements. It's hard to feel down and depressed. If you're, you look at people, they're down. You're like, yeah, I don't feel good. I'm tired. But if you're like standing up, if you stand up and smile, I feel really good right now.
Yeah.
You laugh, like, wow, you actually feel good. And like, holy crap, there's something to this, So anyway, so that's what I do. I go outside, I do that for maybe 5-10 minutes. Then I come in the house and usually I'll kind of do some gentle movement, right? I'll do some movement patterns. I'll maybe do a little bit of core work. I might hit the bike for like 5 minutes and then, just do some easy movements, some easy cardio. And then I'll usually grab the dog and we'll go for a walk. We'll walk around. Usually the sun's coming up a little bit more. So I'll look at the sun and we'll walk. That's, so there's like maybe 30 minutes of easy cardio. And then sometimes maybe 3 times a week, 3-4 times a week, I'll jump in the cold plunge for a few minutes. And then I'll get out and then I might, read my Bible. I might write my goals down, do some affirmation, do some brain work, usually some reading or something like that. Then I'll get, I'm usually getting my cup of coffee about that time. And then I'll start doing some work. I'll do some writing or do my social media posts for the day or start watching some videos and learn something. Then I get on with my day with working. And then usually in the afternoon, 11, 12, depending on my schedule for the day, I'll usually see patients or do calls or podcasts, through the morning and afternoon. And I usually try to get my workout in, usually around any time between 12, between 11 and 2. I'll usually sometime do my workout and then dinner time. And then after dinner, I usually try to chill and turn off stuff. Sometimes we'll like in the evening when the sun goes down, we'll come in and we'll watch some Netflix or watch some shows. But oftentimes, I do have some blue blockers. I don't always wear them, but I say probably 8% of the time I wear them. I put them on if we're going to be watching TV. But other times I might just be chilling out and just in the room and I have some dim lights or a red light and I'll read my book. And then usually in bed, but like I'm usually in bed around 9:30 and then it's, off the lights. I do have like a little red light bulb that I sometimes use and I'll just read for like 20-30 minutes and then I'll go to bed. So just that kind of get that wind down routine, get all the lights off, that kind of stuff, and just kind of chill out and just decompress a little bit. And go to sleep and start all over again. So that's usually my routine.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's helpful. And I've been hearing more about the red lights and the amber lights that we can purchase for the home.
Yeah, I've got a little red light panel right here.
Okay.
So I'll usually do that in the morning too. I left that part out. So sometimes when I'm sitting here, I'll stand and shine the red light on me for like 10 minutes and I'll do that. And then after my lifting session too, I'll usually do the infrared sauna. I'll hop in the sauna for maybe 15 minutes.
Nice.
Infrared sauna is great because it does improve mitochondrial health and mitochondrial function. It can detox. It turns on the heat shock proteins, which can stimulate healing. And if you do it after your workout, it can actually prolong that workout a little bit. It's almost kind of like that exercise mimic I was telling you about. It's kind of prolong the effects of that exercise by keeping, with either heart rate, you're keeping your metabolic rate up. helping now that your blood is flowing, helping with endothelial function, cardiovascular function, detoxing, healing, and you're starting to heal in that process. And then it kind of gives it's that warm feeling. So it's starting to flip you into that parasympathetic mode. So I'm big on work out hard, but then as soon as you're done, try to get back in that rest, parasympathetic mode, because so many of us are distressed, right? We're go all the time. We want to get out of that and kind of just chill. If you look at like the top, powerlifters or athletes in the world, you'll see them. They're like stone faced all the way up to the time of their lift and their event. Then they're like, they kill it, and then boom, they're calm. They immediately turn it off. That's what the pros do. So I try to emulate that. And just so as soon as you're done, do your deep breathing, do your sauna, just kind of immediately get into chill mode and try to be that way as much as you can. That turning off that sympathetic,
that resiliency is important.
And Dr. Fete, before we wrap, because I know we're coming up close to time here, I did want to get into quantum biology a little bit. I'm sad that we left this one for the end of our episode here, but let's define it and high level unpack it.
Yeah, that's something I've been delving into the last 6 months or 8 months or something, and it's a whole it's been around for a long time, but I think people are rediscovering it. There's some people talking about more, so I've been kind of getting into it, and I think Dr. Jack Kruse has been talking about. There's some other podcasters, talking, and wow, it's a whole other world, right? And this kind of goes to what we were talking about with grounding in the sun. So basically, it has to do with, again, syncing your circadian biology with Mother Nature and with our bodies and what we've ancestrally been developed to do, which is to get up with the sun, go down with the sun, to trying to sync that back up. So it really comes down to timing, light, and water more than anything. So it's about energy flows, energetic flows. I think when I first heard about this years ago, I was like, oh gosh, that's crazy. It's woo-woo, right? It's like something to it, So I think the biggest thing is light. Using light, we're energetic beings. Our mitochondria can literally make light energy and photons, et cetera, and make energy inside our cells. So I think by getting that sun throughout the day, that UVA, UVB, and that infrared light is hugely important to prime our mitochondria or, create energy within our cells. So that's why I think if we're sitting inside all day, we're missing out, so get outside as much as you can, or if you absolutely can, use your red light, use your sauna to stimulate that. And then inside our mitochondria, people talk about, have you heard of structured water or easy water? Exclusion. Yeah. So exclusion zone water, it's a whole pattern. I know we don't have a lot of time, but it's like, it's basically creating that layer of creating the negative charge and positive charge of this layer of water in our cells to keep out the good stuff, keep out the bad stuff, keep in the good stuff. So, there's a lot of advanced stuff where these really expensive machines and devices where it swirls water and structures it and does all this stuff. But you could do something as simple as swirling your water, moving it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I heard there's I forget, Sarah something, she's a podcaster. She talks all about quantum biology, and she says, I think she talks about just really having intentions. Like if you're holding your water and you're going to drink your water, just thinking of a positive intention, something you're grateful for, that alone can change the charge within the water. So I don't know if that's true or not. There's no harm in that. But, if you just swirl your water, think about water in nature, it's flowing, it's moving and it's creating energy, kind of like when a lightning strikes, right? It tenses up, right? There's movement to it. Or if you hit the water, there's a flow to it. There's a structure to it. It's not just H2O. There's actually a chemical structure to it, and it can change. So inside our body, if we structure water with intentions, with movements, with using infrared light, I think it can help with energetic flow, with detoxification and overall pathways. So I think that those are the biggest ones right there. And there's a lot more to it, but I think the biggest thing is movement, taking care of our fascia and our soft tissues. But I think the easiest thing for people to take home is get your sunlight, get your infrared light, and in terms of water, just stay hydrated as much as you can. If you can structure it, great. But if you just swirl it, do some intentions, keep it simple. That's the best.
And then there's hydrogen water. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harm in that. I mean, I picked up some hydrogen tablets to put in my water. I don't do it all the time. I kind of forget about it, but I don't think there's any harm. I think there are some studies showing benefit there. So I think there's something to it for sure.
Yeah.
So it's a cool new area. And again, most of that stuff is either cheap or free. So I think it just makes sense. A lot of these things have been done for centuries, right? A lot of the societies and have been doing these practices for generations. So there's got to be something to it, right? If you read about pressure, acupuncture, the shamans and Hindu and, all these different Native Americans, all these things that they did, there's something to it. So, and now we're starting to see more and more scientific articles coming out backing some of these studies up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing this too. So.
Yeah, I remember a couple years back, or probably more than a couple years, probably 5 years ago, I watched some kind of documentary, some type of movie about the structure of water. And I remember thinking, like, how have I gone my entire life? I've never heard about this concept before.
Right.
But actually, I really like Veda Austin has a lot of work around this with intentions, and she was like freezing the water and like the fourth phase of water and things like that. And even if anyone listening in right now is curious about structured water and how it hydrates the body a lot differently, we actually have another episode with Dr. Dana Cohen that we did a while back that was literally all just about water. So check that one out if you guys haven't. But yeah, we could do a whole part 2 just on quantum biology. I feel like there's so much to unpack there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's so much. And I still have a lot to learn. I know I've just been getting into it in the last, like I said, 6-8 months or something. There's still a lot more to it. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating reading for sure.
What are your favorite like books or resources like to kind of get educated on that topic?
Let's see. So I read Dr. Jack Kruse has a book called the Epipaleo FX, which is a kind of covers a lot of stuff, pretty basic. Gerald Pollack, I forget, he wrote a book on structured water. I guess he's kind of like the guru on structured water from years ago. I actually have not read that. It's on my list. I've got so many books I'm trying to read and want to read, but that's one. So I know there's a couple other ones out there, but those are some big ones I've read about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Eric. Like I said, we could have totally done a whole separate episode just on this topic here. I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for bringing so much wisdom and just your expertise to our audience. I'm really excited to release this one. If anyone wants to connect with you, whether they want to work with you as a patient or just learn more about what you're doing, where can we find you online?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You ladies have been great and very gracious and been great hostesses, so I appreciate that. So yeah, drericprimex.com is my main website. There's a ton of freebies there. I got some free workouts and some free stuff there. I've got my products. I have some my own, custom made protein products and different products and things. But I've got a lot of free content. My YouTube channel is under Dr. Eric Primex. Most people find me on like Instagram, Facebook, again, either under Dr. Eric Fete on Instagram or Dr. Eric Primex. I've got a ton of videos we can watch for free. But Dr. Eric Primex is my main website. You could book a consultation or get any of my stuff right there. So I'm happy to help and provide any insight or give any advice. So always anything I can do, hopefully I provide some value for listeners. And again, thank you for having me on.
Of course. And for all of us listening in today, wishing us all vibrant health and wellness. And until next week.
Thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe so we can continue to pay it forward together. And remember, the key to longevity is knowledge. Keep learning, growing, and tuning in to the Vibrant Wellness podcast to discover the latest insights and strategies for optimal health. Join us again next week. And just a reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy of Vibrant Wellness. As always, consult your healthcare provider before applying any recommendations that you heard here today.